we're going to go into Exodus 22 now. Let me just unpause the recording here. All right, here we go. We're back, everyone. So sorry about that short intermission, but we're back, and we're going to go into Exodus 22 now. Let me just pause the background noise so it's not flooding me out there. All right, here we go. So Exodus chapter 22, if one steals an ox or a sheep and kills it or sells it, he shall pay 5 calves for a calf and 4 sheep for a sheep. And if the thief, just getting a little back here, I'm going to have to see here. There we go. And if the thief is found breaking in and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no blood shed for him. But if the sun has risen upon him and he is guilty. So basically, just to expound on what who is commanding here, the context here, it's a very enigmatic commandment here. But basically, it's if someone breaks in, is trying to, harm your family, you're allowed to kill them. But if the sun rises, meaning it's the next morning, somehow the homeowner, if he kills that thief, he's actually found guilty. So it's pretty interesting there. I mean, if you look at the Targums, they kind of try to expound on the difference, that the difference could possibly be hinting to murder. The intention of the thief is murder versus just stealing. And that's why you're allowed to kill him. Which, I'm not totally against that type of expounding, but if we just look at the word for word from the Septuagint here, it seems to be a difference between the night before it's okay to kill the thief versus the next morning, you got to let him go. So that's kind of in our Western culture, it doesn't really make much sense, but I guess it's looking at it like, that the thief should not be killed if the sun rises, meaning it's the next sunrise. So anyway, that seems what the literal word for word interpretation would be. So the thief has, and it says the shall die said, and if a thief has nothing, let him be sold in compensation for what he has stolen. So meaning if the thief gets caught, he doesn't have anything to his name, he's poor, let him be sold for what he has stolen. So meaning he will be the compensation. So he becomes someone's servant. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
I just wanted to make sure, because I know we were talking about this through the week. And that's basically what you just said is basically what the Charles Thompson says. So I don't know if you misunderstood what it was saying. Because I know you said it didn't really make sense versus Britons.
Yeah, the Bretons, I don't know. I think the wording of the Charles Thompson was just weird to me. Okay. But I did get what it was saying. It was saying the same thing as the Bretons, but to me the Bretons was just a little bit clearer. Maybe the Complete Apostles Bible, modern English, was a little bit clearer. So, but yeah, I get what he was trying to say in his translation was the sun rises. By the time the sun rises, you cannot kill the thief. So yeah, it's interesting though the way the Targums put it. It seems to, in their interpretation back then in the mid, I guess 200 to 300s AD, they looked at it as there seems to be a difference with this ordinance, whether the person is trying to kill you and your family, what you should do if the thief's trying to kill you versus he's just stealing something. So I don't know how accurate that is, but it kind of makes a little bit more sense to me. And that's why I'm not totally against it, because there seems to be a difference in context with what you're supposed to do with someone trying to hurt you and your family. I could understand that you should kill them because you're protecting your family. Let me see if I can find it.
Well, I would say that if you approach a thief in the middle of the night when he's broken in, that thief might become defensive or offensive, so you would have to defend yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see here. Let me see if I can find it where it says, yeah, the pseudo Jonathan one says, if a thief be found in a window of the wall, meaning he's breaking in through the window, and be smitten and die, there shall not be on his account guilt of shedding of innocent blood, meaning you're not killing innocent blood. The homeowner would not be guilty because you're killing someone that's breaking into your home. Um, and if the thing be as clear as the sun that he is not entering to destroy life, and one has killed him, the guilt of shedding innocent blood is upon him, meaning upon the house owner. And if spared from his hand restoring, he shall restore. If he has not wherewith to restore, he shall sell him for his theft until the year of release. So it kind of, they're trying, I guess whoever wrote the pseudo Jonathan one is trying to make a distinction here, in his opinion, on the two scenarios, the night before and the morning after. It seems like their interpretation would be that one, the allowance to kill the person would be because they're trying to hurt you and your family, which I kind of agree with. They're trying to like murder you. So it's kind of like you're defending your family versus it's not clear that he's trying to hurt your family and you kill him, that you would be guilty of murder. So that's what it's kind of saying there. Go ahead, Joshua.
Just kind of comparing this with with the renewed covenant. Kind of what I'm kind of seeing here is that Yahushua refers to you have the parable of the 12 virgins, and it's midnight before Yahushua comes. And there's other verses where it kind of talks about, his coming being likened to the rising of the sun, or, the ending of midnight going into the morning and the rising of the sun. It's interesting that the thief, if he's found, before the rising of the sun, he can be sold for, okay, wait, never mind. I'm sorry. I'm mixing all that up.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I was
look at that a little bit more, but
yeah. To me, the Targum actually makes a little bit of sense in this instance, in my opinion. It makes a little bit seems like there's a distinction why the night before and the morning after. It seems like it could also have been a difference in what the intention of the thief is, if that makes any sense. That's kind of where I'm siding with at this point, because it could be just literally that the night before there's a difference, and that I don't know, maybe you're giving the thief that much amount of time that you're not allowed to kill him at that point. It could be just that, but I think the Targum might be giving some insight into the way the Hebrews interpreted that verse way back when, and that it kind of makes sense. Like, the one intention, you kill him because he's trying to hurt you and your family, versus if he just steals something, you should give him a chance to repay it or to sell it himself. So I don't know. The pseudo Jonathan might be important just to take a glance at, to try to understand that verse a little bit better, especially the way the Hebrew people would have interpreted that verse. But anyway, let's see. We're going to go to verse 3. Let's see here. But if the sun is risen upon him, he is guilty. He shall die instead. If a thief has nothing, let him be sold in compensation for what he has stolen. And if the thing stolen is left and is in his hand alive, whether ox or sheep, he shall restore them twofold. So another interesting thing we're seeing here is, when you steal something, you're supposed to at minimum repay back double or even quadruple in certain instances. So it's definitely Yahuwah's intention here is to make sure that you're not really tempted to steal, because if you steal and you get caught, guess what? You got to pay back at least double, sometimes quadruple what you stolen. So it's not even worth it in the end. Go ahead, Joshua. I don't know if you got a hand up and took it down, or.
No, I took it down.
Oh, okay. And if anyone should feed down a field or a vineyard and should send in his beast to field down another field, he shall make compensation of his own field according to his produce. And if he shall have fed down the whole field, he shall pay for compensation, but the best of his own field and the best of his vineyard. And if the fire has gone forth and caught thorns, and should also set on fire threshing floors or ears of grain or a field, he that kindled the fire shall make compensation. And if anyone gives to his neighbor money or goods to keep, and they are stolen out of the man's house, if the thief is found, he shall repay double. But if the thief is not found, the master of the house shall come forward before Elohim and shall swear, surely he has not done wickedly in regard to any part of his neighbor's possessions. According to every injury alleged, whether it concerns a calf, donkey, sheep, a garment, every alleged loss, whatever in fact that may be the right ruling of both shall be perceived before Elohim, and he that is convicted by Elohim shall repay his neighbor double. And if anyone gives to his neighbor a calf or sheep or any beast to keep, it is wounded or dies or is taken or no one knows, an oath of Elohim shall be between both, each swearing that he has by no means been guilty in the matter of his neighbor's possessions, and so his master shall hold him guiltless and shall not make compensation. But if it is stolen from him, he shall make compensation to the owner. And if it is seized by beasts, meaning torn by beasts, he shall bring him to the witness to witness the prey, and he shall not make compensation. Okay. All right. And if anyone borrow from his neighbor and it becomes wounded or dies or is carried away, and the owner of it is not with it, he shall make compensation. So we see here what's interesting is borrowing from your neighbor in this concept. You got to understand the Israelites are farmers. So like basically economy to them was the livestock. So that's why it's talking about an animal as a borrowing. Okay, so, but if the owner is with it, he shall not make compensation. But if it is a hired thing, there shall be a compensation to him of his hire. And if anyone deceives a virgin, now this is key here. I like how the LXX translates this verse. If anyone deceives a virgin, so this is not a positive thing. Okay, so it's basically a guy having, I guess, what we would call in modern day terms, a one-night stand with a virgin that's not betrothed to any man, that's not entrusted to any man to be his wife. So basically, whoredom. This is talking about whoredom here. Okay. And if anyone deceives a virgin that is not betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely endow her for a wife to himself. By the way, what's interesting about this, if we go back to the story of Dinah, that Amalekite guy actually realized he screwed up and that he was endowed to wife her. It's kind of funny because he's a Gentile. He's not even of Shemite lineage, yet he understands that concept. So it's kind of interesting when you go back to Genesis, like he asks Dinah's brothers and her dad, Jacob, I feel I'm required to marry. I want to marry your daughter, after he messed up and, had premarital intercourse with her and she was a virgin. So just find that interesting. And I know a lot of people think that's rape, but if you read the whole context of the story and you read this commandment here in that context, I think you'll understand that Christian translators have mistranslated certain versions of the Bible to make it look like Dinah was raped. She was not raped. Okay. Anyway. And if anyone deceives a virgin that is not betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely endow her for a wife to himself. Meaning he's required. He has no choice in the matter. He has to marry her. Okay. And if her father positively refuses and will not consent to give her to him for a wife, he shall pay compensation to her father according to the amount of dowry of virgins. It's interesting. I've been wanting to study more into this. I have yet to see the dowry for virgins ever used when whoredom is not committed. I'm just noticing that this is like the only instance I've seen so far in Torah where you got to pay a price for a virgin, to her dad to marry her. So, and it seems like it's conditional because right before it says that if her father does not want him to marry her, he does this, right? So kind of seems conditional to me, because it says her father doesn't want to give her to the guy. He shall pay compensation to her father according to the amount of dowry for virgins. You shall not save the life. So then it goes to sorcerers. So before we go to the commandment about sorcerers and not allowing a witch to live, I see Joshua has his hand up. Go ahead, bro.
So I would say there are a couple other instances for the dowry. One is where, so you have Shaul wanting to deceive, when his heart is set against David, and he gives one of his daughters to him for marriage, and David is worried about not having a dowry to give. And then Shaul tells his servants to tell David, "Don't worry about a dowry. All I require is 100 foreskins of the Philistines." So in that instance, I would say that it seems to be just something general given in marriage. I think another instance is with Samuel in Judges, or Samson in Judges.
Okay. Yeah, I stand corrected.
That you're in the olden days, dowry was a normal place thing. That was women had a dowry, and it would be presented to, it was done very normally back in the old times. Now, of course, we don't have that, but in the olden times, it was a normal place thing that was done.
So dowry is what, pieces?
It's like
what?
I believe it was pretty much always actual money.
No, what I mean is like, what does dowry mean? Pieces of silver? Like, because it says a certain number of dowry here. So is that supposed to be like the same as drachma, or like you'll see other Greek terms being used?
I think it just depends on what you have.
Okay.
I think it just depends on what you have, whether it's, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming not just money, but it could be livestock.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
because I see the bride price sometimes is like a specific amount, sometimes. So that's why I was asking, because sometimes you'll see in scripture, especially in the Septuagint, they use drachma a lot, or very like Greek, old Greek type of terms for the exact amount of coins and stuff like that. So
another instance for the dowry that comes to mind is Jacob, when he wanted to marry Rachel, and when he wanted to marry, I think it was Rachel and Leah. Rachel was Leah's, not Rebecca. It was Rachel. When he wanted to marry Rachel, he didn't have. I'm pretty sure it talks about him not having anything to give, so he gave the 7 years. That's his price.
Interesting. Definitely want to look more into that if there was a specific amount of money. The way the Samaritan Pentateuch in that verse seems to translate, it seems to be referring to like a specific type of amount of coins or money. So I definitely want to look more into that, because I would not be surprised if Yahusha being sold for a certain amount of pieces of silver has to do with a bride price too. I wouldn't be surprised. So, so I definitely want to look more into that. All right. So verse 18, you shall not save the lives of sorcerers. I think that's self-explanatory. That means like, don't allow a witch or a wizard to live. Modern terminology. Even the Samaritan Pentateuch, basing their English translation obviously off of the King James, has witch. You shall not suffer a witch to live, to be alive. Okay. Everyone that lies with a beast shall be put to death. Too bad this world doesn't go off of the Torah. We would have a lot less sodomic type of society. Okay. And unfortunately, because no country goes by the Torah, you see Canada, it's actually legal to have this.
It's legal here too.
It's legal here too. Bestiality is legal.
Yeah, I looked that up. It's legal in 13 countries right now, and we are one of them.
Okay. Seems like the verse numberings in these versions of the Torah here are a little different. Like you have for verse 19 of the Targum, it's already talking about the commandments for the widow and the orphan. So they're kind of a little bit off chronologically with the verse numberings here, I'm noticing. Okay, so he that sacrifices to any mighty ones, but to Yahuwah alone, shall be destroyed by death. What I found interesting in this verse of when you look at the other versions, like the Targums, it paraphrases any other mighty ones to idols instead of Elohim. It says idols, so it kind of makes it distinct instead of the generic phrase Elohim or Theos. It kind of makes more distinct that is talking about the mighty ones of the Gentiles rather than, so it's making a distinction there that if you do that, you shall be put to death. And it's also, instead of Yahuwah alone, it's paraphrased that if you sacrifice to any other name than to Yahuwah's name, that you shall be put to death. So I find that interesting. The authors of the Targums understood that Yahuwah's name is not just about his proper name. That's what a name means to them. Also in the Hebrew culture and the older cultures, someone's name meant their character, their personality, who they are. So essentially, he is his name. So anyway, go ahead, Joshua. I see you got your hand up.
Well, that's an old hand. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. So let's see here. Verse 21 here. You shall not hurt a stranger nor afflict him, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. Okay, that's self-explanatory there. You shall hurt no widow or orphan. So obviously, I like how the Septuagint puts the paraphrases or gives you the meaning of afflict in that context, is to hurt. It means you should not hurt a widow or orphan, so do not afflict them. Okay. And you should afflict them by ill treatment, and they should cry aloud to me. I will surely hear their voice, and I will be very angry and will slay you with the sword, and your wives shall be widows and your children orphans. So we were just talking about this last night. When you sin against Yahuwah, your punishment is going to fit your crime. He's not going to punish you harsher than what you've done. Okay. So Yahuwah is a very righteous Elohim. He's not going to give you a harsher punishment than what your crime was. So right here, it's like tick for tat here. So you afflicted the orphans and the widows. Well, now your wife is going to become an orphan and a widow, or your children will become orphans and your wives will become widows. So it's fitting exactly 100% the crime. All right, so here we go. Verse 25. And if you should lend money to your poor brother who is among you, notice how it says to your poor brother who is among you, you shall not be hard upon him. You shall not charge interest. So again, this is showing that we are required to be lending to our brothers and sisters. We are not required to do that to heathen. I know that's contrary to what's taught in the church today, but that's the reality, is that Yahuwah, when he talks about giving money to the poor, the orphan, the widow, or helping them out, usually, first and foremost, he's talking about his own people. He's not talking about, generally speaking, heathens, random poor people you see on the street that most likely, could be using the money you give them to, do drugs and stuff like that. So just something to think about, that really we are required to help out our brothers and sisters. That's what scripture teaches. So as far as a random person in need, I would say, go by the discernment of the set apart spirit. That's my take on it. Anyway, verse 26. And if you take your neighbor's garment for a pledge, you shall restore it to him before sunset. Okay. For this is his clothing. This is the only covering of his nakedness. How shall he sleep? If then he shall cry to me, I will hearken to him, for I am merciful. So this is how we know our neighbors are brother and sister. If our neighbor's just common mankind, why are they going to cry to Yahuwah? The majority of mankind are not believers. So again, if you read it in context of what Yahuwah is calling your neighbor, he's referring to your Israelite brother and sister as your neighbor. Okay. Okay. I will hearken to him, for I am merciful. You shall not revile the judges, nor curse the ruler of your people. Now, this verse is mistranslated in a lot of translations. I don't like the fact that it, especially the way the English does it, because they translate mighty ones with a capital G for God. So it's making people think it's referring to the creator here. It's actually referring to the judges of Israel. Okay. And I'll just show you guys this is where the Targums kind of come in handy, actually, because they paraphrase the generic title Elohim here as the judges of Israel. Okay. So this is where having a Targum is actually beneficial. Because you got modern English translators that have preconceived biases and think that Elohim is always referring to the creator. So sometimes, when they're translated with the stupid substitute God, this is where it gets confusing. Go ahead, Brother Joshua, while I find the Targum version of this verse here.
Interesting that, so you have the Charles Thompson, you got the Britons, you got the Lexham, and then the Complete Apostles Bible. Charles Thompson understood that. He got it right. He said, you shall not revile Elohims, or you should not revile Elohim rather than Alua. He puts Gods, gods, but.
I'm glad he understood that. It seems like a lot of other translators didn't. I like how the pseudo Jonathan does it here. And I think for some reason it's one verse prior. Says, sons of Yasharal, my people, you shall not revile your judges, nor curse the rabbins, or rabbis, who are appointed rulers among your people. So I don't agree with the title rabbi, but just saying it's talking about masters. Do not revile the masters or judges or rulers of your people. That's what it's talking about. So I think Sister Marissa was asking us about the term Elohim last week. Here's a perfect example where Elohim can be used in the context not referring to a deity whatsoever, if that makes any sense. So this context, the phrase Elohim is being used even in the sense of humans. Unfortunately, when you get to Psalms 82, people try to take this verse and try to insert it into Psalms 82, which is very dishonest. You're being dishonest with the text, in my opinion. They'll try to say, well, Yahuwah is talking to human judges in Psalms 82. I would completely disagree. But that's a whole nother topic that we've already talked about, and we already did a study on about, are humans lesser mighty ones? And so anyway, we did a study exposing that false doctrine. So anyway, so Exodus 22:27 or verse 28, it might be in your version, it should really read as judges. For Elohim there. I think judges is a better term just for our English language. It definitely makes us understand more what it's talking about here. So basically it's a commandment talking about do not revile at that time, especially it would be do not revile Moshe, do not revile Aaron, do not revile, the Levites. They're the leaders, they're the judges and leaders among the people. The elders would be considered, the Elohim of the people, the judges of the people. Okay, so in that context, Elohim is not referring to a deity. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to beat a dead horse there. Okay. Verse 29, you shall not keep back the first fruits of your threshing floor and press. The firstborn of your sons you shall give unto me. So shall you do with your calf, your sheep, your donkey. 7 days shall it be under the mother, and the 8th day you shall give it unto me. And I remember a brother, I think Zachary Bauer was talking about this one time, referencing this verse in the context of where it talks about boiling a lamb. You shall not boil a lamb in its own mother's milk. That possibly could be the context of that, is this verse we just read, is that, you're not supposed to have a baby goat or lamb. You're not supposed to be cooking it before it's at least 8 days, being, nursed by its mother. So, personally, I'm still at the literal interpretation of that other verse, is that you don't boil it with its own mother's milk. I think that's basic enough to understand, but it could also be the context is that it has to be nursed under its mother a certain amount of days, and you shouldn't be cooking a baby goat or lamb to eat before it's being under its mother 8 days. It's very possible. Go ahead, Brother Joshua.
Are you at the end of that chapter?
Yeah, I'm about at, let's see here, verse 31, literally the last verse.
Okay, I'll wait until you're done with the chapter.
Yeah. Shall be set apart men to me. You shall not eat flesh taken from beasts. Again, taken from is like an idiom for like torn by beasts. Okay, so it's talking about we as Yahuwah's people that believe in Yahushua Messiah should not be eating meat that's been torn by beasts or that's been ravished by another animal. Okay, so all right, so that's the end of that chapter. Before we go to chapter 23, I think Brother Josh has something to share. Okay.
Yeah, the two things. 2 Peter 2:10. Paul seems to be pulling from Exodus 22:28. Let me go to that real quick. 2 Peter 2:10. He says, but especially those who go after the flesh and desire defilement and preach against authority, being insolent and proud, who do not tremble in the presence. I don't like the way that reads. It says, bring not railing, they are not afraid to speak evil of dignities, whereas messengers, which are greater in power and might, bring not railing accusation against them. I believe that Paul was pulling from Exodus 22:28. But also the dowry of virgins, 22, it was Exodus 22:17. Interesting connection with the bride price and just virgins in general in 2 Corinthians and 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians 6:15-20. I'll just give y'all the because that's a lot to read, 15-20, but it basically talks about not joining yourself to a harlot because you're joined to Yahuwah. And then it talks about in the end of that chapter, it talks about do you not know that you've been bought with a price? Right after it talks about being joined, your body being joined with Yahuwah, you being one with Yahuwah. So not committing fornication. And then when you get to 2 Corinthians 11 verse 2, he says, for I fitted you for one husband only, that I might present you as a chaste virgin to the Messiah. So thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Wow. Praise Yahuwah. That gives an answer for what I was asking about earlier. So it seems like there is a correlation there. Yeah. And just to expound upon what Brother Joshua just mentioned in 2 Peter, he's pointing out here that Peter's definitely seems to be pulling from Exodus 22:27 there. And actually, he's showing that we should be subjective under our rulers as the angels are subjective to Yahuwah. So that's the point that Peter's trying to bring out here, is why would you revile the judges of your people while the angels know not to revile their creators? So it's kind of showing like a allegorical parallel there, that we should be respectful to the leaders of the body of Messiah. That's how I take it anyway. So I think that was a really good correlation there. So let's see here. I think we're about to go to Exodus 23 and see here. Exodus 23. Let me get back to my compare view here. All right, so here we go. You shall not receive a false report. So that's talking about, false accusations. Okay. You shall not agree with the righteous to become an unrighteous witness. You shall not associate with the multitude for evil. You shall not join yourself with the multitude to turn aside with the majority so as to shut out right ruling. You shall not spare a poor man in right ruling. And if you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall turn them back and restore them to him. And if you see your enemy's donkey fallen under its burden, you shall not pass by it, but you shall help to raise it with him. You shall not pervert the right ruling of the poor in his case. You shall abstain from every unrighteous thing. You shall not slay the innocent and the righteous. You shall not declare righteous the wicked for gifts. You shall not receive gifts, for the gifts blind the eyes of seeing and corrupt righteous words. And speaking from someone like me that comes from the warehouse vocation, there's a lot of gifts being received. That's all I'm going to say about that. Definitely people that are being declared righteous in the worldly aspect of it's okay for them to stay working there, versus those that are hard workers losing their jobs for no reason. There's definitely a lot of gifts being received in the world. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, verse 9, and you shall not afflict a stranger, for you know the heart of a stranger, for you yourselves were strangers in the land of Egypt. 6 years you shall sow your land and gather in the fruits of it. Notice how it says in your land, okay? It says sow your land. Does not say the land that you are in captivity at. Does not say where you are dispersed at, okay? But in the 7th year, you shall let it rest, because a lot of our brothers and sisters, they desire to obey you, who they get overzealous. They're like, we need to be doing this right now. We're not doing this commandment. But where is this commandment supposed to be kept? That's what we should be asking ourselves. Is this commandment to be kept in the land of America, in the land of Great Britain, in the land of Italy? To me, it's very clear this is a commandment that cannot be kept outside the land of Israel in Jerusalem. It literally says your land. Okay, this country is not our land. Yahuwah did not promise us the land of America. He did not promise us Great Britain. He did not promise us Canada. Okay, so we got to keep all that in context. Okay, and leave it. Think about it for a second. Was Daniel able to keep this commandment when he was in Babylon? Just something to think about. Was he letting the land rest? Was he able to do that when he was in physical Babylon? Just something to think about. Okay. And leave it, and the poor of your nation shall feed. Notice how it says the poor of your nation. It does not say the poor in general. Okay. And the wild beasts of the field shall eat that which remains. Thus shall you do to your vineyard, meaning something that you own. Okay, and to your olive grove. 6 days shall you do your works, and on the 7th day there shall be rest, that your ox and your donkey may rest, and that the son of your maidservant and the stranger may be refreshed. Observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. And you shall make no mention in the name of other mighty ones, neither shall they be heard out of your mouth. By the way, when you look at the context, especially in the Hebrew of make no mention, okay, it doesn't mean that you can't read scripture out loud where it says Baal and that it's a sin to read out the name Baal, okay? What it's talking about is using in prayer, okay? Do not use names of other mighty ones when you're in prayer and in worship to the Father. For example, don't be praying to the Father calling him Adonai. Don't be praying to the Father calling him, Jehovah. Don't be praying to the Father calling him God or Lord. Okay, that's the context. Same thing with worship. That's why I'm very selective with the music I use for worshiping the Father. Anyway, so just wanted to explain the context of that, because I know some people take that verse in verse 13 to extreme literal, where they're spelling out the word Baal because they feel it's breaking that commandment. If you look at the context of that verse and the other times that commandment is referenced, especially in the book of Psalms, where David is writing a psalm and he's saying, I have not spread my hands out to the sky to names of other mighty ones. Okay, so obviously it's the context of worship that commandment's talking about. Okay. Anyway, verse 14, 3 times you shall keep a feast to me in the year. Take heed to keep the feast of unleavened bread 7 days. You shall eat unleavened bread as I charged you at the season of the month of new grain. For in it you came out of Egypt. You shall not appear before me empty. You shall keep the feast of harvest, the first fruits of your labors, whatsoever you shall have sown in your field, the feast of completion at the end of the year, and the gathering of your fruits out of your field. So, by the way, the completion of the end of the year is a paraphrase of what we call today from the Greek Pentecost, or what we would call it from the Hebrew Shavuot. Okay, so it's talking about the same feast. All right, verse 17, 3 times in the year shall all your males appear before Yahuwah your Elohim. Okay. For when I shall have casted out the nations from before you and shall have widened your borders, you shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, neither must the fat of my feast abide till the morning. Which seems to be a link back to the Passover lamb, because we know that the Passover lamb was a feast. It was a festival meal, and you can't allow it to, abide to morning. You got to burn it in the morning, remember? So it seems to be a reference back to the commandment of the Passover there in verse 18. You shall bring the first offerings of the first fruits of your land into the house of Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall not boil a young lamb in its mother's milk. And behold, I send my angel before your face, that he may keep you in the way, that he may bring you into the land which I have prepared for you. Take heed to yourself and hearken to him, and disobey him not, for he will not give way to you. For my name is in him. I like how it says that. My name is in him. Okay, so obviously this is not a regular messenger Yahuwah is talking about here. This is talking about Yahusha here. And FYI, Yahusha, a lot of the times, the majority of the time in the Old Testament, he was not known by his earthly ministry name Yahusha. Okay, he was known by different titles before he took on human flesh. He was known as the messenger of Yahuwah. He was known as the messenger of the covenant in Malachi chapter 3, verse 1. And I could show you a verse from Judges after this chapter, how I know that's definitely referencing to Yahusha, even from the Masoretic text in the book of Judges chapter 2, how it's very obvious that it's not a regular messenger. Okay, so anyway, verse 22, if you will indeed hear my voice and you will do all the things I shall charge you with and keep my covenant, you shall be to me a peculiar people above all nations, for the whole earth is mine, and you shall be to me a royal priesthood, a set apart nation. These words shall you speak to the children of Yasher all. If you shall indeed hear my voice and do all the things I shall tell you, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. For my Moloch, or my messenger, or my angel shall go as your leader and shall bring you to the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Girgashites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I will destroy them. You see a little oneness here. He just said his messenger is going to do it, but then he says, I will destroy them. But who's killing them? Isn't the messenger killing them? There's a little oneness there between Yahuwah and Yahusha there in verse 23. Verse 24, you shall not worship their mighty ones nor serve them. You shall not do according to their works, but shall utterly destroy them and break to pieces their pillars. And you shall serve Yahuwah your Elohim, and I will barak your bread and your wine and your water, and I will turn away sickness from you. There shall not be one that is impotent or barren on your land, Okay, so he only promises us that when we were obedient to him and in the land he gave to us, that there would be no impotent or barren. He doesn't say that there won't be barren or impotent on the lands that we're scattered at. Okay, that's key to understand here, the context there. I will surely fulfill the number of your days, and I will send terror before you, and I will strike with amazement all the nations to which you shall come, and I will make all your enemies to flee. And I will send hornets before you, and you shall cast out the Amorites, the Hivites, the Canaanites, and Hittites from you. I will not cast them out in 1 year, lest the land become desolate, and the beasts of the field multiply against you. By little and little I will cast them out from before you, until you shall be increased and inherit the earth. And I will set your borders from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the great river Euphrates, and I will give into your hand those that dwell in the land, and will cast them out from you. You shall not make no covenant with them and their mighty ones. So there's a context between what type of covenant he's talking about here. And even Christian commentators, I'll give you the link from BibleHub.com. Even Christian commentators have understood that there's some correlation between what type of covenant Yahuwah is talking about to not to make with them and their mighty ones. That has something to do with acceptance of other gods, other deities, and other forms of worship that Yahuwah is forbidding them to do with these specific tribes. So it says, you shall not make no covenant with them and their mighty ones. Okay. Something to think about, where the whole world has this movement, coexist. We need to coexist. We can't be disrespectful to other faiths, right? Well, what does Yahuwah say in that verse? Do not make covenants with them and their mighty ones. Just something to think about. Verse 33, and they shall not dwell in your land, lest they cause you to sin against me. For if you should serve their mighty ones, these will be an offense to you. Okay. Very interesting. So, or a stumbling block. By the way, offense and stumbling block, they're like idioms for one another. They're the same thing. Okay. So anyway. All right, so before we do the last chapter, I think we have a hand raised here, or do we have any hand raised here?
The Mazarites tried to remove an area of oneness. In verse 21 or 20 through 22, he says, "Behold, I send a messenger before you." I'm just kind of paraphrasing to go a little bit quicker. And then you get to 21, he says, beware of him, hear his voice. And then when you get down to 22, in the Septuagint, it switches from hearing his voice, and it says, if you shall indeed obey my voice. But then when you go into the Masoretic, it says, but if you shall hear his voice. So Mazarites changed it to just all him, instead of him, me. So you see the oneness in the Septuagint. I guess the Masoretes didn't like that. So
Great job, bro. What I find ironic is that they do all that work to do that, but then when you get to Judges chapter 2, verse 7, I'm going to show you something interesting. It seems like Satan forgot to cover his tracks here, because when you go to even the Masoretic version of Judges 2:7, I'm going to show you something interesting about this. We get a little hint of who this the Moloch of Yahuwah actually is, who the messenger of Yahuwah actually is. Okay, and I'll show you something interesting here that even the Masoretes left in here. Okay, it says here, let me see if I can find it real quick, where it talks about I brought you out of the land of Egypt, and it all talks, this messenger is talking in first person like he is Yahuwah. Oh, here we go. It's in verse 1 of chapter 2, my bad. Now the angel of Yahuwah went up from Gilgal to Bochim, and he said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give to your fathers. I said, I will never break my covenant with you. So if this is just a regular messenger and it's not Yahuwah, this is what we would call blasphemy. If this person is not the Father, why is he claiming that he made a covenant? If he's just a messenger of the Father, why would he be saying, I swore to give to your fathers? I brought you out of the land of Egypt. Because when you go to Exodus, Yahuwah is saying he's bringing them out of the land of Egypt. Okay? So you can't have it both ways. If you separate this person from Yahuwah, then we have to say this messenger is committing blasphemy. And what's interesting is when Yahusha comes to earth in his earthly ministry, he's speaking like the way this messenger is speaking to the Pharisees. And the Pharisees actually understand what he's saying. And that's why they say, you know, we don't stone you for a tov work. We stone you for blasphemy. Because they understand what Yahushua is claiming. They get it. They get it. So this messenger here, mind you, this is the Masoretic text here. So that's why I kind of made a joke like Satan sometimes forgets to cover his tracks. Because I'm reading from the ESV, the English Standard Version, 2011 here. Okay, this is a Masoretic text Bible. Okay, so it says, and the messenger here is claiming to be Yahuwah here, is saying, I will never break my covenant with you, and you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. And then he references what he originally gave them in the book of Exodus here. So again, and he even says, but you have not obeyed my voice. This messenger is claiming the voice of Yahuwah is his voice. So who is this messenger that's talking here? I would assert that this is Yahusha. This is Yahusha pre-incarnate in the book of Judges 2:1-2. This is Yahusha literally claiming to be the Father, saying he's the one that made the covenant with them at Mount Sinai. All that. So just something to look into for yourselves. But I find it interesting, Brother Joshua is bringing up the fact that the Masoretes try to eliminate some of the oneness stuff. It seems like they forgot one account to eliminate in the book of Judges. So I find that ironic. So that's pretty interesting in my opinion. So, and I don't know, Brother Joshua, if that's old hand or if you wanted to add something.
Old.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're about to go back here. We're going to go back to the last. We got one more chapter to read in this portion. Then I'll be going to a new reader. Okay, so Exodus chapter 24. And Moshe, he said, go up to Yahuwah, you and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and the 70 elders of Yasharal, and they shall worship Yahuwah from a distance. Now, it's very interesting that there's 70 elders. I find it very interesting. That's a whole nother topic for another day, but I think it might parallel with there might be a parallel between that and that 70 nations came from the Tower of Babel and all that, and that you'll see certain versions of the Targums in Deuteronomy 32, how it compares the princes of the nations at that point in time after the Tower of Babel to eventually Yahuwah would be giving those inheritances of the nations to his people, Yasharal. And so I wonder if there's like a parallel there with the 70 elders of Israel and the 70 principalities he had to put for the 70 nations or the 72 nations or whatever. Go ahead, brother Joshua.
You also have there was 70 elders from 12 tribes. And then when you get into the new, the Brit Hadashah, you have your 12 main apostles, but then he also sent out 70 others.
Yep, I was thinking about that.
Very interesting. Yeah. And Masha alone shall draw near to Elohim, they shall not draw near, and the people shall not come up with them. And Masha went in and related to the people all the words of Elohim and the ordinances, and all the people answered with one voice, saying, all the words which Yahuwah has spoken, we will do and be obedient. So again, we were talking about this last night. What does it mean to believe or to trust in Yahuwah? It means we will do and be obedient. That was part of believing the words that Yahuwah gave them. Okay. And Masha wrote all the words of Yahuwah, and Masha rose up early in the morning and built an altar under the mountain and set up 12 stones for the 12 tribes of Yasharal. And he sent forth the young men of the children of Yasharal, and they offered whole burnt offerings, and they sacrificed young calves as a peace offering to Elohim. So we already see peace offerings are already being established. We're only at the 24th chapter of Exodus, and that's already being established. And Masha took half the blood and poured it into the bowls, and half the blood he poured up upon the altar, out upon the altar. Okay. And he took the book of the covenant. So wait a minute, hold on, because there's this doctrine out there. He only gave 10 commandments at Sinai, supposedly in chapter 20. Yet there's already a book of the covenant. So obviously the top 10 were not the only commandments he gave at Sinai. Okay. So, and read it in the ears of the people, and they said, all the things whatsoever Yahuwah has said, we will do and be obedient. And Masha took the blood and sprinkled it upon the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant which Yahuwah has made with you concerning all these words. And Masha went up, and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and the 70 elders of Yasharal. And they saw the place where the Elohim of Yasharal stood, and under his feet was as it were a work of sapphire slabs. Now, very interesting to note. I find it interesting. Sapphire, if you look up the color of the sapphire stone, it's literally almost the same color of the blue we're supposed to put on our tassels. So I find it interesting when you compare sapphire to what's the Greek word for blue for the tassels and numbers? I forget the exact word, but it goes back to another blue type of stone that's almost the same exact like light blue color, like almost turquoise almost. So it's very interesting that sapphire is the color of the tables of stone. I find that interesting. As it were the appearance of the firmament of heaven in its purity. Interesting. Oh, that kind of makes sense. The sky is like a light blue. That kind of makes sense. And of the chosen ones of Yasharal, there was not even one missing, and they appeared in the place of Elohim and did eat and drink. And Yahuwah said to Masha, come up to me in the mountain and be there, and I will give you the tablets of stone, the law and the commandments which I have written, to give them laws. And Masha rose up, and Yahusha his attendant, and they went up into the mountain of Elohim. And to the elders they said, rest there till we return to you. And behold, Aaron and Hur are with you. If any man have a cause to be tried, let them go to them. And Masha and Yahusha went up to the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. And the splendor of Elohim came down upon the mountain, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And Yahuwah called Masha on the 7th day out of the midst of the cloud. And the appearance of the splendor of Yahuwah was as burning fire on top of the mountain before the children of Yashur all. And Moshe went into the midst of the cloud and went up to the mountain and was there in the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. All right, so that is the end of our Torah part of the Torah portion. So now we'll probably be doing a new recording and going to a different reader here for Jeremiah. So let me see here who we all have. We have a couple of people here today. So let me see here. I think we're going to go with Brother Joshua here to read Jeremiah 33 and 34. But first I want to see, I think Brother Joshua has a hand up. So before we go there.
The Greek word for the blue was huakintinos.
Okay.
But theirs is really weird though in its definition, because it says hyacinth, of the color of hyacinth, but then right after that it says of a red color bordering on black.
Yeah,
It's weird.
that's where it gets confusing. You have to go to, I think the root word for it is a zirconium, which is actually like a sky blue, if I'm not mistaken. Zirconium stone. Let me see. I remember looking this up on eSword on the Thayers, and it's where it gets confusing is, it's saying it's a red, which it's definitely not a red, because if you look at Masoretic, both the Masoretic and the Septuagint agree that it's a type of blue. The problem with the Masoretic is it tries to say it's violet, like a combination of purple and blue, which I disagree with.
Okay, so the root word is saying in the Strongs, it's saying hyacinth or jacinth, some gem of a deep blue color, probably the zircon.
Yeah. So that's where I kind of land on, is the zirconium, the zircoin, which is like a sky blue, turquoise, like light turquoise. It's kind of like a very, it's a deep sea blue, but a light deep sea blue. It's, it's kind of like, let me see if I can, I'll show you from one of my jerseys here, because I have like a old Carolina Panthers jersey. The type of blue they use is probably what it was, like this type of blue here, like that type of blue. So that's probably what it was, a zircon stone. So that's kind of what
I've done with my tzitzit is I've gotten ones that are just like 4 different shades of blue. That way I can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, and I know some brothers and sisters, they see the difference from the Masoretic to the Septuagint. They'll put like violet and that type of blue, just to cover all bases, and I totally respect that. I just don't trust the Masoretic with the violet thing. I don't. I think they started changing things, in my opinion, just like they changed silver trumpet to ram's horn and all that. I don't know. They don't got a good track record with me. So
changed his theme to Shekinah.
Yeah. So, Shekinah, they changed splendor or steam to the Shekinah glory concept. They have too much of a muddy track record, in my opinion. So, I'm not going to trust the Masoretic on that concept that it's violet. And I know there's even brothers and sisters that still like are very pro Masoretic that side with blue over violet, like Jim Staley. So, for the most part, I think most of us agree it should be blue rather than violet. I think violet wouldn't make any sense at all. What's interesting in the Targums I've noticed is that they separate purple or violet from hyacinth. So to them, hyacinth is not it's not a violet or a purple to them, because they'll be talking about the colors of the tabernacle. I've noticed in the Aramaic Targums, and they actually use the Greek term hyacinth as a separate color from purple. So to me, it wouldn't make sense that it's violet if it's not purple. So that, anyway, but I just find that interesting. So, but anyway, so I was just citing that the zircon stone is very similar to sapphire color. It's like very similar. I think sapphire might be a little bit darker tad bit darker, but it's pretty much the same. So I find that interesting. The color of the tablets were sapphire, and the color we're supposed to have on our Deceives is like a similar color. So I find that interesting. Kind of makes sense. You know, the tassels are supposed to be a reminder of his law. His law is the color of sapphire. Kind of makes sense to me. But anyway, so I'm gonna do a new recording for us because it's gonna be at least a good hour or two portion with Jeremiah 33 and 34. So let me just start a new recording. Then Brother Joshua will be reading for us when we get back. So stay tuned, everyone. And to our brothers and sisters just tuning in, Shabbat